Chairperson Long,
Here.
Vice Chair Cranston, Trustee Balderson,
Present.
Trustee Patton, Trustee Lucas.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment if there is any. Seeing none, we'll move forward with item number 3, approval of the minutes of the previous January 23rd, 2020 board meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Any questions, changes, comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a move, we accept the minutes of the, I make a move that we accept the minutes of the January 23rd, 2020 meeting as presented.
I can second that, right? That's how this works.
Yeah.
You were there.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Aye.
You're gonna get this going.
I know.
It just takes a little while.
All right, we'll move on to item number 4, Friends of the Carson City Library report.
Sorry, there was not one submitted this.
Okay.
We could have pulled this.
All right, then we'll move on to item number 5, the Library Board of Trustees business. So item 5A is discussion and possible action on the general budget supplemental request for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, Diane Baker for the record, what you have in your packets are the proposed supplemental requests for the fiscal year 2021. And there are a couple of items listed in here. The first in the list is an increase for hourly seasonal. And that is a request for an increase of $15,000 plus the other costs related to the part-time workers' comp and Medicare. Part of this is due to a required increase of minimum wage, and then we also wanted to index the other part-time. The pay scale that you see here does mirror what they are doing at Parks and Rec for their part-time and seasonal as well. So we should be in the same ballpark on that. The last paragraph there is just to confirm this board has voted to provide merit increases to part-time individuals, and this will help, having this in here will help us have that ability to continue that. Are there any questions on that request?
So it talks about the costs that are charged to the library's hourly category for the workers assigned to the library. So like
Yes.
from facilities. What, is there anything else? Is it just facilities?
It's just facilities, and that's the janitorial work on that. So they actually hire and manage the individuals and manage their work schedules, but we are charged the hourly cost for those individuals.
Okay.
Okay, the next one in your list is for a makerspace specialist. So just as a general background, the library has not added any personnel, and actually since the recession, when several positions were lost at that time. And this is one of our first requests. We had an administrative request before, but we are looking to really work with our makerspace and have that as a full-time specialist, also to work with our electronic devices that we have. We have the range of Kindles, laptops, our public workstations. This would be to focus mostly on the makerspace, but also to be able to support the digital and technological aspects that we have in the library and available for public. Since this was put in, and I should have had just a little caveat, that we got the forms and the instructions like, I don't know, a few days before we had to put stuff into the agenda. So in the meantime, on this particular one, we do have a more complete job description for the human resources and also something that, a position description questionnaire that they have as part of requesting positions. The numbers on this one, they mirror the category we have for senior library assistant. However, there are some, we will have to update some of the numbers. These were the best estimates that I had at the time, so we could get you a good ballpark figure for what we're going to be asking. Okay, if there's no questions, a couple of.
I have a
oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So under the makerspace, what position managed the makerspace before or currently?
Well, they have been part-time positions, either under grants, actually pretty much under grants, and that has, at one point, well, it was because we didn't have a creative learning manager at the time. I was overseeing the grant position, and at this point, Maria is overseeing the part-time position. The determination on the supervisory role, it could be creative learning, it could be the library director. That's because our current part-time position that takes care of our public tech, who's retiring in a week, really retiring. That position in our organization chart does report to the director. So that is one that before we take the position to IFC, that we would determine the best place for that in the organization chart.
So we're looking at these for the purpose of them being prepared for the Board of Supervisors budget. So are we gonna, is this gonna come across our board again before so that we can see the harder numbers and the description of the job?
Yeah, well, we can bring those back. These are due to the budget office on the 11th. So we will have to have it finalized at that point, and we will have on this and on the seasonal, the part-time seasonal positions, I would have firm numbers at that point after working with human resources and payroll.
So do you think I'm just thinking for today, as far as action goes, like if we're gonna approve this, like how much it could vary if we approve it now and then it changes later and we don't have another board meeting between now and when it's submitted? So I just want to know, like, if we approve it today and there's a huge fluctuation in the numbers.
I see.
Like how is that handled, I guess?
Is it about simply prioritizing and then getting the numbers straight?
Well, the purpose of the agenda item today is because the library boards under NRS have oversight for budget on that part. And then, so anything that we want to take to, for budget, of course, we need the support and prioritizing, reviewing of that. With regard to the dollar amount here, I'm trying to think of how much it could fluctuate because I was using an existing class for senior library assistant. One of the things, something possible could happen, I guess, where with the involvement of human resources, that as they look at it, they may think it belongs in a different class. There's nothing like this currently in the job descriptions that exist for Carson City. So that, I mean, I see on that part that could happen. However, whatever the amount that we have from human resources is what we take forward. So if it's higher, then we would take that forward to the interim.
The IFC.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Okay, then the next item that you have is the software maintenance. This is asking for an increase, and this is, we've been talking about this actual item in previous meetings where we have, this software maintenance has been spent or expended out of several different categories, which hasn't given a true reflection of the library's requirements for some of these different products. What you're seeing on here are the continuing products that we have, and some of them have been paid out of professional services. This is in the past. Professional services, operating, software maintenance, And also, one of the things that, we've moved funds around to be able to afford this. And so we're trying to get a true reflection of what the library needs and expends for the different software products that they need.
So what happens to the categories that these come out of?
Well, the way we've been doing at this point, we have been able to identify a few budget accounts or budget lines that don't ever get fully expended, and one of them is like power. However, that one is a dangerous one at this point because one of the programs within the city over the last few years has been with doing a power saving contract. And the chief finance officer had indicated at one meeting that they are going to be reducing that to try to be more reflective of what each agency is spending. So we wouldn't be able to kind of borrow from that one So this is so we don't have to borrow from other budget accounts. This would set this amount in the account.
Okay, so if you move these to the one account, the accounts that you were using before, I
Those
guess what I'm
would-
saying is,
oh.
are those budgets, are they going
They're-
to
those
be
are gonna be-
reduced?
No.
No, okay.
We're
So then
asking-
you'd have
yeah.
more available in the budgets that they come out
Correct.
of
We're
for other
asking for an
things.
increase to reflect that, and also because we wouldn't be able to kind of borrow from another account that we have in the past.
And just interjecting, Todd Colgrove, to clarify, because I'm a simple-minded person, and Diane cleared that up for me, that one of the line items in the budget literally is power, that in the past has traditionally been over budgeted by the city, and we've been able to use that to pay for these software things. And so the read on that is that now we're on to the next phases of the power savings that will be coming into place. So that budget line item is likely to get more real. So this is, at the end of the day, about getting our budgets more real.
Can you just briefly go through what these are, just to remind us, because I'm not,
No,
I can't keep track of all of
and
it.
that's fine. What you are seeing, again, are quick and dirty. I wanted to get it out there.
That's
And what is
fine.
going to be turned in, we'll have a description for finance as well. So Central Technologies, that's a small one that this is part of information that goes on the paper receipts when people check things out. It gives the information of how much they saved by checking things out. We're also able to put different seasonal items to remind people the summer learning program's coming up, or some other program. So that is Central Technologies. Envisionware actually covers a lot. This is a third-party system setup where we get everything from our security gates, our cash drawers, our print reservation system. And it's also connected with a number of other programs that support that. So this is third-party software that extends a number of things within the library. Pharonics, that is that's the company name. It's called Deep Freeze, and this is what we use on our public computer stations that essentially resets every computer, clears any maliciousness that's in there, and just resets it in case, on that and that happens every night with our system. Library Aware is what we use for our newsletter system that comes out. Our newsletter comes out of, or from EBSCO. PV SUPA, that's our big ticket item, and that is our software maintenance for our automated materials handler. We used to go with that one through Envisionware because that's who we bought it from. We found eventually a few years ago that we could go direct to the manufacturer and save a few $1,000s on that. Smart Sheets, SpringShare is, and if you don't know Smart Sheets, that's kind of like a Excel with additional aspects. And when we are able to put the budget information and have that graphical interface, that's done on Smart Sheets. SpringShare is what we use for a number of things that includes LibGuides. We also do our desk scheduling with this. We have our calendar program is part of SpringShare. And then Google Suite, we have a range of business aspects with the docs sheets and a number of those programs, and also the Gmail.
Thanks.
Sure. And the last is trying to get back or make a little more headway with our public access computers. We had in the past couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I believe now, where we were able to get $5,000 from the city, and also the Friends of the Library have been great at matching that as well. And so, but that gets us about 10 computers a year, and we have a lot more than that. And so we are not even maintaining the pace that the IT has for updating computers. So this will get us closer to where we would get more closer to the 15 computers a year, and that would get us a whole lot closer to keeping that. And it's very important for the library to have that available, because we're one of the few places where individuals who don't have computers or don't have access to full suites of software can do that at the library.
Is there, do you guys have a formal schedule of what they recommend? And do you know how many computers that is and what the cost looks like to keep up with their schedule?
I can get you the specifics. It's generally 3 to 5 years. I'm pretty sure IT's, and I'd have to look at it again. I'm pretty sure theirs is a replacement schedule, so nothing's older than 5 years old for computer workstations. And ours, the number of computer workstations, laptops, and the like, I mean, I could give you all our devices, which are not covered here. We're close to 100 if you include tablets and Kindles and all that. But even with the computers that we have for youth that are in the digitorium, that are upstairs, let's say, I was going to say we're behind at this point. We still have computers that are from 2013. They're working wonderfully, but we don't know what day they're going to just stop.
Yeah. So we don't have any numbers on what is technically out of date according to this replacement policy?
I can get that for you. I'm sure
and
we do have that in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, off the top of your head, I know.
And I'll chime in because it is actually 5 years is considered end of life. 3 years is considered to be an optimal timeframe. If you go back 10 years, then you're at Windows XP, and I hate to tell you, that's what runs our AMH, so.
Yeah, we know. Well, I know that.
So what we're looking for is if you have any requests for adjustments or edits or beyond that, looking for support, and if there's any priorities that you would like to make for these items. We would like to put all of these forward, but if there are some priorities on that, we would be glad to include that information as well.
Julie Balderson for the record. Just going back to the equipment piece just for a minute, and because Trustee Cranston is not here to say it, I guess I'll say it, that we are creating quite a bit of risk having outdated technology, and whether or not it's exploited, we have no control over, but I'm sure that the Carson City Information Technology Department is also well aware of that, but if I could just say it again in this space, I'd like to.
And thank you. That's definitely appreciated that even though we do have maintained an active firewall, we still have devices that are quite old.
And Trustee Balderson, Todd Colger, for the record, if I may elaborate, that's part of where that Pharonics deep freeze is so critical. Because even if something is obsolete and it's potentially attackable and infectable, if it gets reset to zero every time someone uses it, then the exposure is less, but it's quite real.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Right, they're all priority. A lot of this still feels like we are still digging out of a recession that we should have
Yeah.
recovered from hopefully by now.
Yeah, so I think it would be just a motion to, I don't have any particular order.
No, I don't either. I mean, they're all important.
They're all good, yeah.
Beth Lucas. If we don't put any priority or order on these, they all get presented for funding, and at that point, the other board could. Is that correct? They get to decide. We're just saying, yes, we agree with presenting these for budget increases.
Correct. And then the next, just so it, for clarity, the next steps here, once it's turned in, it does go to finance, and, they do have input. Any request for positions goes to the Internal Finance Committee, IFC. So those are reviewed separately. And then so the IFC can make a determination as to whether they would recommend it going forward to the Board of Supervisors or not.
So I think our motion would be that we're approving the 4 supplemental requests. To be included in the annual budget prepared for the Board of Supervisors. If you guys want to make that motion.
I move to approve the 4 supplemental requests to move forward to the Board of Supervisors.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Move on to item 5B, presentation and discussion and possible action concerning revisions to the Carson City Library policy.
Thank you, Diane Baker again, for the record. So you're seeing this right now because of, in actually trying to refer to a policy that had been approved by the library board in 2016, went to the most current one, and not, at this point, not quite sure how it happened, but what was approved in the 2016 revision and update didn't get carried forward to 2018 when there was a couple of changes there. So what you have, and there's a couple of formatting issues we're working on, but as soon as that was identified, it was, we got to get this, at least get some things put back in there because we had been depending on the 3D printing policy. That's the main one that we realized was not there. And just inadvertently had been left off when that last revision was done in 2018. So what you have in front of you, there are really 2 changes we're asking you for. One is on your packet page 26, and it's page 10. In 2018, one of the items that was added was in relationship to the Adams Hub for Innovation. And so we're looking to strike that. And then the other is your page 34 in the packet and page 18 in the policy is putting the 3D printing policy back where it belongs. There are a couple of related items near the end where there were some amendments, changes made to not reconsideration, forgive me on that one, the if the denial of a 3D print, if somebody came in and wanted to 3D print a weapon that, or anything else that fell outside of our boundaries, there's some changes to where they can request a reconsideration on that. So that is what we have before you and why we have it before you.
So I have a question that's not really related to these two things, just out of curiosity, looking at this. It talks about BRIC, the Business Resource Innovation Center. Is that technically still called BRIC?
It is, but it's refers to what we have moved to the second floor, the @2 area, and it is a center of business-related information.
Okay.
Mostly print-related at this point.
Julie Balderson for the record. So what's what we're looking at hand, the 3D printing policy.
This was almost exactly, there's one change, one strikeout that we had done in here. The online calculator that was in the 2016 revision is not a useful calculator anymore. So it's one. And then the other was that the use of the calculator or naming that is a little bit more of a procedure as opposed to a policy. That we would have a method to calculate cost and identify it, payment is more of the policy level, and identifying that is a little more procedural.
And that's always the issue with writing policy. We get a little over prescriptive and then we have to update more than we need to, and I get that. I just was wondering if I could get a little bit of background, and I know this might be going into a different area, but we're stating that a Premier Library card is required to use a 3D printer, and I'm just kind of curious about the logic behind having these separate kinds of cards in the first place. I wasn't here for that.
Diane Baker, I'd be glad to mention that part. We do have essentially 3 different library cards. We have the regular library card, Premier Library card, and then we have an Internet Library card. The Internet Library card is available to ensure that if anyone needs a computer, can't prove their an address, that kind of thing, they can still get access to do things either personal or related to trying to work out of their situation where they don't have an address at this point. The Premier Library card existed before we had the Makerspace and 3D print. And that was as the library was adding more and more technology, especially expensive technology of high-end or higher end at the time digital equipment that was available to check out, that we were looking, at that time, we're looking to have just a slightly higher commitment and being able to track. And that was also carried into when we established the Makerspace on that. It's a very good point that you bring up, because we have actually recently been talking about if a Premier Library card or having that Premier status is still something that is reflective of what we need and is reflective of how we can best serve the community, but we still do have that in place.
And I guess that might be my next question. Is there any data or anecdotes you can share where this would demonstrate that there is a need to have these 2 different versions of cards? Or maybe just a study that's been done, anything that would back up why we're doing this.
If I could wait in, Todd Goldgrove, for the record, I'm with you. My first reaction was to say, are we overcomplicating this? By the same token, it's right in the fringes between policy and procedure. It's part marketing because, I've got a Premier card, which is pretty exciting. But from a pragmatic standpoint, just right now, if you're going to check out a higher-end piece of equipment and we want to hold your feet to the fire, we'll have a form that'll say, you recognize that this is how much this cost, and we're going to come after you for it if you don't bring it back, in a way that we don't do for someone that's just checking out a book. And the lowest order form of that might be the Internet Library card, where You know, it's a tiered system. I am not aware of any studies that have shown that there are benefits there, but I think there may be. I think it's a larger conversation that we need to explore a little bit with the community. If for no other reason than one of the metrics, one of the simplest metrics that we were talking earlier about the position for the makerspace tech, one of the earlier metrics from about 3-4 months ago that you noticed that Irma had presented, and there was this what appeared to be a precipitous drop in people signing up for Premier Library cards. And when I talked with him in person about that, he was explaining it's because they were pretty much the folks that were using the makerspace, and all of a sudden they fell through the floor. So for right now, we're still using it to track the makerspace and users of the laptops and the other tech. But I think it's a conversation that we need to have as a management team in the library and get a clear focus on it, and then perhaps bring it back.
Beth Lucas, for the record. So what additional requirements would a person fulfill to get a Premier card above a regular one?
Well, it's actually pretty basic.
Sorry, let me, Jason Woodbury, DA for the record. The agenda item deals with the policy. So if we can sort of pull ourselves back to the policy and insofar as that addresses the differences between the card, we need to stay within that.
So perhaps maybe if I could rephrase the question, that a Premier Library card would be necessary for 3D printing purposes because 3D printing is expensive, more expensive than a book? Is that?
It was actually not just 3D printing. It happens to show up in this, but would be to utilize any of the equipment within the makerspace. And it is, these are much more expensive pieces of equipment. We do have other things in place for safety and for individuals to be able to understand the equipment they're using. But so I just wanted to make sure you didn't think it was just for 3D printing.
I
It's for the
understand
whole-
that, but
Okay.
as I'm looking at the policy, it does not say this is a makerspace policy. It says this is a 3D printing policy. So I guess, again, is there a reason to do it that way?
May I make a suggestion? That, and it reflects what our DA was mentioning, the comments that you've brought forward today are actually really good ones for us for the director and for the management team to review if having a Premier card and having that level, even though we've had it for a number of years, it may be obsolete on that part. So we can take that as one question, and then we could look to approve the policy to go forward, and then anything that is related to a Premier card, depending on how that study, that secondary thing, that can be brought back to take care of the policy as it's needed. Does that help keep us on track, you think?
So would we suggest then to remove that line entirely from the policy, just for your discretion at some point later to determine, or would you want to keep it in?
I think everything else that, we're doing is in line with that. And so I wouldn't want to deviate on this because this policy was really originally approved before, just wasn't put into the books.
Exactly.
So-
If I may chime in, Chair Long, you're exactly right. This was approved previously. This is the policy that we've been operating under. This is just a matter of getting our paperwork squared up again so that we can come back and review it at a future date.
So, question for DA Woodbury. In our motion, can we ask for more information on the Premier card later? Or should that be, can we ask for that under board announcements? It's the best way.
The appropriate place would be under board announcements, and I think the appropriate place would be under the board announcements. I'd ask you to leave that out of the motion.
Okay. All right. I am fine with the way it is, just because we've been operating under it. And I think that everything else that is going on within the library that's similar is operating under that same policy as well. So at least until we can talk about that other issue in more detail, I would,
That would be a new agenda item, I would think, later
Yeah.
on. So I am going to make a motion that we approve these changes that you are suggesting that you found that had been left out. And go on from
so
there.
we want to approve the policy.
We want to approve the policy
as
changes. yeah.
presented. Okay.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. All right, we'll move on to item 5C, discussion and possible action to explore the possibility of scheduling and provisioning an all-day series of training workshops to onboard new and refresh existing trustees of library board.
Madam Chair, if I can give a little background on this. This agenda item is just to open the floor so that you can give us more clear direction about what you would like us to see to flesh out in terms of the training and the retreats that we've talked about in a previous meeting. So this agenda item is to actually open the floor for our previous comments saying
Okay.
you should do this.
So has everybody received their login to the board training? I forget what it's called. I always forget what it's called. The online training. I know, I haven't finished. I'm gonna let you talk
Okay.
because I know you have some specific items.
So there's a couple ways we can get this task done, but I think having some sense of maybe looking back the last 10, 15 years, I want to capture time before the recession, to get a sense of where the library's been, where we might be going, what informed decisions and when. So that's one piece that's specific to Carson City Library, of course. The other piece is just, we're all fairly new, well, not all of us, but we have a lot of fairly new trustees on the board, including me. And so just knowing the best of NRS 379 and what trustees should be doing when we're the most effective, which I know statewide we've got trainings as well. So I don't know if it's just tack a little bit on at each one of our board meetings, if it's a separate retreat where we just get it all done and out of the way and move forward. I don't know what the appetite would be for our board, but I think there's a couple different ways to skin the cat.
Madam Chair, Todd Kolkov again. I neglected to mention DA Woodbury's request earlier that we slot it was about an hour and a half training for the open meeting law? 2 hours?
It could be as long as you want.
Oh dear,
But
okay.
I think
So if we can count on one of those things tonight, that would be
For,
brilliant.
to go over open meeting law specifically, or?
two main topics, open meeting law and ethics in government law.
Perfect.
I probably also want to just touch on the Public Records Act too.
And will they be different from what's provided on the AG's website?
Yes,
Okay.
it'll be more focused on the main issues that tend to come up.
Great, thank you.
I would like to do that at the end. I would like to tack it on, especially if it's just an hour. I'd rather tack it on at the end of a meeting we're already in progress of, if that's what you guys. No.
Oh, we don't have it
No, no,
agendized
no.
today.
We would agendize
We still need to-
So we could do it we can talk about the dates, but that would be a really good training. I do like some background on the history. We have a new director as well, so I don't know like how we could do that, how much, just some of the main issues, core issues that have come up with the Carson City Library and just some background information, especially for us. I mean, I've been, I think, on the board now for 2 years, but I still feel like I don't know it all. So if we can get something like that, I don't know.
It may be, off the top of my head, I'm thinking it would be wonderful to pull together if Trustee Patton might be willing to sit down with myself and Diane and just begin sketching this out and then to get a retrospective of the whole thing, both to throw me under the bus in a harder core way and to make sure that we can flesh that out. And I didn't mean to steal anything you were about to say, Dan.
No, and there are a number of documents that do exist that would give you a great perspective. There's been different needs assessments, space assessments that have been done. And so we could bring together a number of those documents, previous plans, that can help you see what, where the thinking, where the development was directed, and then an overview of potentially maybe some of the main things that have come through out of the Board of Trustees going back, because, we have everything on that part. But I'm not sure I'd go back to, the 70s or 60s or 70s, but the highlights of some of board action and the importance of it to the library and to the community.
And I think that would be very helpful to be able to go back and look and see how much, if any, percentage-wise, has our budget increased over the last so many years? How has our staff increased or decreased based on cutbacks and things that were made back in the 90s? And I've got all that paperwork. I'm sure you do too.
Probably could help fill in. We have quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's officially part of.
And, just to kind of give us all a feeling, if we are being brought back at the same speed and level as other departments in this city.
Yes, I think absolutely having a comparison would be
Yeah.
very beneficial. And to also, if we've had in the past other collaborations with, I don't know, the schools or the Board of Supervisors or any other sort of initiatives that came out, would be useful to just revisit and see what had been. And then also, I don't know how far you want to go down, but just kind of get a comparison on what communities our size in other places might be experiencing with their libraries, and that could be past, present. I just would like to see some kind of comparison, and I'm sure there's a few places within the state we could compare, or other similar sized states, similar demographically appropriate comparisons. I think that would be beneficial.
And Diane Baker again, actually that last on the comparisons, there are a number of electronic tools that we have access to that can help us really zero in on some of that.
That is exciting. I would like to see that.
And if I may, this is brilliant and is right on the edge of spilling over into a 2-day thing, which I'm certainly not opposed to, but I look for direction from the board. If
I
you
would
can
like
give
to
us the
see
outlines.
these on separate days. I don't want to do open meeting ethics and Public Records Act and then, try to fill my head with all the history
Right.
of the library as well. I think
Okay.
that, in my preference, would be to do them at the end of a meeting. We can figure out at which meetings, and I think starting with the open meeting law training, that 1 hour training would be best, and then move on to maybe the history. And then we can see after those two what comes from that. That gives you guys some time to put that history together as well. That's my opinion.
So do we want to combine open meeting law, ethics and government, and records requests into one?
I think he said that was an hour.
Jason Woodbury, DA. That's what I had anticipated in setting the hour timeframe. I'm happy to break those up into probably half an hour for the open meeting law and then another half an hour for the Ethics and Government and Public Records Act. Happy to do it that way if you want.
I'm fine with it all as one. I think it's all related.
Okay. I just want to make sure that it wasn't just, the 1 hour was going to be just open meeting law. It's open meeting law plus the other two all in 1 hour.
I think that would be great for an after this meeting kind of thing, but I think some of this other stuff we should maybe like turn into a whole separate
might be-
workshop.
Yeah.
I would love that, yeah.
Yeah, sit down over coffee and breakfast and go on into lunch if we have to.
Yep.
To
Yeah.
just get it all out there. Because if we start piecemealing it, then we're going to forget,
Right.
how does this connect to this?
I totally agree, and I think that would still need to be an agendized meeting, but we don't necessarily have to keep the regular agenda items, right?
Right, we can do
Would
it on
be
a
special-
Saturday or
Yeah, it's-
whatever.
Jason
Yeah.
Woodbury, DA, that's correct.
Okay.
It is a public meeting because there is a quorum. You are discussing library business, but yeah, you don't need any of the regular items. You do have to have 2 public comment sessions is all.
Can do. So is that then the idea, so we would do as far as specific to the library history and.
Would we call that a retreat or a special meeting? If we did the like library history, we've talked about
Should be a
retreat.
special meeting, but we could call it.
For legal purposes, it doesn't matter what you call it. You
Okay.
can call it a retreat or a special meeting or whatever you want. It will have to be noticed, just like a regular meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can throw my 2 cents in, I don't think the board is in any way retreating. But a special meeting would be well brilliant.
We're charging.
Charging for
I
it.
like that.
All right.
Okay.
Do you have a motion? You want to do it?
So the motion then would be to set a separate, or are these 2 separate motions, one to add? Do I need to add a motion to just tack on training at the end? I didn't think so. Okay, so a motion to add a separate board
Special
workshop, special meeting for the purposes of acclimating the board to library history and how to be the most effective. Yep,
For timing.
great.
Well, for the,
Do we need to set timing? Like, do we want to say it's going to be a half day or whole day? Do we need to do that, or can we?
I think that's, I don't think we have to set that.
No.
but-
You don't, yeah, you can, or you can decide not to.
Okay.
And with the open meeting workshop, that's something, between the chair and the director, that doesn't have, that can be
Okay.
set
We can
on
set
that. That's
that.
your prerogative
Okay.
to
Great.
set that part.
Brilliant.
All right. So
Should I recap my,
yes.
reword, restate my motion? I don't know what I said.
And then do we want to request to add an agenda item to the March meeting for the open meeting law ethics training?
I don't think it takes a motion to do that. I think the message
Chair
has been
sets,
conveyed.
right?
The chair
sets the
sets-
We can
agenda,
just
you
say,
throw that
hey, I
next
want this on the agenda.
and-
Okay. All right.
We're
So
good.
just- Yeah, so just.
Okay, so I'll move to establish a special meeting of the Board of Trustees for the purposes of training. And reviewing library history. Okay.
All right, do we have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's passed.
And I believe that now also the date for that can be, does that, okay, yeah, okay, so the date for that can also be worked out with the chair. Okay, thanks.
Weekend. Okay,
But it doesn't have to be
I think we can do that.
here, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to item 6A, presentation and discussion of a report concerning activities, operations of the library since the last report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Todd Colgrove for the record. You've got the library director's report in the records associated with this agenda. So I'll skim across the top. If you haven't seen them already, a couple of nice pieces that were published. One was in the Nevada Appeal and one was in the Carson Now. There was Oblique that was associated with a display that the library is hosting, which if you haven't had the chance to see it, those dolls are remarkable. through this weekend. It's changing out. Also, the second bullet point that the Nevada Library Association elections are now closed. And I am officially the member of the board and president-elect, so we're kind of going under the bus for that. So Carson City continues to lead libraries statewide. And Diane, arguably, even more importantly, is continuing in her service as the co-chair of the Government Affairs Committee. So that, we'll be pulling that all together. Third bullet point, I wanted to make sure that it's on each of your radar that the National Library Legislative Day is upcoming on May 4th and 5th. It's an opportunity, the registrations are open through the end of this month. So if you're interested and have the time, the registrations are open through the end of March? Through the end of March. Thank you. Through the end of March. So just throw your hat in the ring. I think sooner is probably better than later because they only have about 400 slots. And the ALA will bring us in on one day, throw us under the bus. How are we supposed to really work our congressional representatives? And then the next day we'll go work them. You would be, I should mention that Tammy Westergaard, Nevada State Librarian and former Carson City employee, will be coordinating that. So we might just have the tiniest edge in terms of getting in. So just putting the bug in your ear. And I also wanted to make sure that you're aware of some stability concerns that I have. I don't want to be alarmist, but everything that we do in the library runs on the library catalog, in particular the cooperative catalog that we share with a number of libraries around the state. And for each of the last 3 months, we've had extended outages of 4 to 6 hours, which we believe have been worked around now. But we would have an outage from 9 o'clock in the morning till noonish, where no one can check books in, check books out, get on a computer. It's all hands on deck, trying to sort it out because the library catalog was not connecting. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of it and that I'm further actively having conversations with library catalog vendors to make sure that we have a failover plan in place. In particular, working with Polaris, who's owned by Innovative, who's owned by, it's a whole tier, but that our cooperative catalog is actually running on right now. And my goal is to have a dollar line item and to make sure that the city is in a position to pull the trigger if they need to, if the co-op, for whatever reason, all of a sudden would stop working for an extended period, we could just get on the phone and say, okay, pull our records, put it into a separate instance, get it going, send us the bill. So I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware that I'm having those conversations separately so that you won't be surprised. And also, I just want to underline that I believe it's my role as a fiduciary to make sure that I run to ground what it would cost if we were doing that separately. Because part of the reason of participating in the cooperative is to save money for the taxpayers of Carson City. And so I just wanted to make sure you're not caught off guard. And actually, DA Woodbury and I just came from spending all day working with the Board of Supervisors refreshing and the other city managers to refresh the city's plan. And I shared with you the items that the library has in the strategic plan. There were a couple of modifications. One of them, the first one and the last one were really about assessments and making sure that we know where we're going and that we're aligning the library services with what the community needs, including the last one that would be funded by the grant that the cooperative is actually hoping to get through. The EDGE assessment is really about identifying our library services that we provide. How are our customers using them? What are their needs? How does that fit in their world? And also, how does what we're doing compare with what other libraries are doing elsewhere? Speaking to your question, Trustee Balderson. And this will help us to gain a clear focus on where we're going and move in that direction. There, I can promise you that there are library services that each of us are providing that are being used in critical ways that we don't know. And if we don't know, we could easily break them or stop doing them without ever knowing. And that's something we want to avoid. These seem to go over well as well as could be expected with the Board of Supervisors, and we'll see where that goes. Again, this is all, the theme that I kept reiterating today is just that we're doing more, better, faster with the same resources. Thank you very much. And we'll see where that goes. I also wanted to let you know that, just give you a quick note that the newest member of the Nevada State Council on Libraries and Literacy, Pat Reagans, who's the member representing members of the public with disabilities, he spent the better part of 2.5 hours touring through the library and getting all of the inside scoop and trying to get from us ways that the state might be able to help. We're still pulling together ideas and trying to get a sense of it, and we'll see where that goes. But I thought it spoke volumes that the newest member was willing to come out and visit all the libraries around the state to see where that goes. And I also wanted to make sure that the board is aware that unfortunately we had to trespass 2 individuals altogether from the library for a month, which is a pretty extreme event. But so far it's holding. Just so you're aware of it in case it comes back to you in your role as trustees. Diane, I don't know if we can share in a public venue the interaction that took place there or not. And I don't mean to ask you a question I should have asked D.A. Woodbury.
Well, I believe, I didn't bring the names with you, but part of when someone's trespassed or suspended, and this is in the policy, that if there are reasons for them to be suspended from the library for a certain period of time, there's a formal process. And the formal process does include giving them a letter with a description of all the reasons why this has taken place, the date that the suspension starts, the date that it ends, and also with regard to their option to ask for that to be considered. But a reconsideration of that can come to the library board. In this instance, we had 2 individuals associated, a man and a woman, and there were repeated issues with behavior, with being under the influence, and the like, and also some involvement, sheriff visits. And so we had to have a point where they could not be at the library or on library property for a period of a month. And the good thing, when they came by, when we delivered the letters to them, they were sober, so that helped on that part. And we did have to ask them to leave once, and then it was like, oh yeah, you did give us letters, and they left. So there was no further issues with that. Suspensions can be determined for quite a range of time, and it can be dependent on how egregious the issue is.
And on a separate but related note, we trespassed a 10-year-old boy for a week this past week, and that letter got torn up in shreds in the middle of the thing.
But in that case, there's a letter for the
parent.
For the parent as well. And, yeah, we like to have the safe place and have a welcoming, but it's not a free-for-all. And even just for a few days, that can be enough for that age level to understand.
Has to be safe for everyone, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So are any,
No, thank you.
item.
No, thank you. That's perfect. And thank you for keeping me out of the weeds, Diane. That's exactly right. And then within that same report, I've got a bullet pointed list that just gives a thumbnail background for the request that came last time for. Diane had gone through the trustees' meetings to pull out each of the salient points that had been addressed in the last couple of years associated with the questions around social workers in the library, including a number of the related initiatives that took place down below that. And what we can do is take this and incorporate that in the historical backdrop if you would like that during the retreat, or it could be a separate. Very good. So just the quick thumbnail then is there. You can see that there's been some glancing conversation about it, but we haven't actually moved forward a lot, which is good.
What would it take to, Balderson for the record, what would it take to move forward? What would you like to see from us?
I think, Todd Colgrove, in response, Trustee Balderson, I would like to see, if it's an option, and thank you for asking, I would like to see after the initial introduction and the training and the background on the library history, that before the trustees break apart, that we might consider at least an hour or so to do some blue sky brainstorming around this, to see, we, in the thing that we're not calling a retreat, but in that special meeting, we'll have established how we're supposed to behave and operate as a public board, and then we've got a background of the library, where we've been in the past. And I can't think of a better time to really focus on where would we like to go in the next few years, if only the high points, and we can stick some pins in those. If that would be an option, I think we could go a long way in a short period of time.
Thank you. So then we just need to include it in our special meeting, sounds like.
Very good. Well, I'll agendize. And just upcoming, I wanted to, Diane has been streaming the Public Library Association meeting all day next door. That's been a pretty active conversation, right? And you're, of course, welcome to join again tomorrow, where that'll be running from about 8 in the morning.
It's 7:45. It's live streamed and PLA's in Nashville. So first session starts at 7:45. And there is coffee and tea.
And then as a final point, just a reminder that the Staff Development Day is scheduled for all day Friday, March 6th, so we'll be closing the library. And the training is going to be focused primarily around everyone getting tooled up for supporting the library's activity in the census. And while we're there, the Friends are hosting a lunch, a staff appreciation, and I'm sure that you would be more than welcome to come by. RAD, Nevada, Envy Momentum will be there between 10:45 and 11:30. Might be an ideal time if you'd like to update the headshot that you have for the library website. Yeah, on the same day. So. And that does it for that agenda item.
All right, thank you. Let's move along to item 6B, presentation and discussion of the budget reports.
Go for it.
Woohoo! Sorry, I'm up to speed. I can actually do the budget, which is great. Thank you, Diane. Actually, it's a long training thing. And we don't have the screen, so I apologize and hope that you'll be able to follow along in print. I'm just opening this up because what you've got is the budget as it stands updated from the previous month. And if you've got any questions, I stand ready to field those questions. Otherwise, I'll just skim across the top and point out a couple of things that I was getting answers to questions that I had. And you'll see that there are a number of the line items in this budget that changed pretty significantly from the previous month. And that has more to do with reconciling and truing things up, getting things moved from one line item to the other. So if there are particular questions that come up, I will point out that the line item called City HSA contribution is a new animal this year, apparently. It didn't exist as a line item in our previous budgets. So that will be getting that incorporated into the infographic for next month, so you'll be able to look at that. Other than that, what you had under services and supplies, you'll notice $5,000 was pulled out of professional services and $7,500 from contractual services. And then on the next page, another $5,000 that was pulled out of postage shipping. And that goes into truing up that software support. This is the thing that we talked about earlier, is how do we pay those bills? And it'll be good to get that one more normalized as a separate line item so that and you can look at it and know at a glance what you're seeing. And other than that, I don't know if you have any other questions, by all means, please feel free to toss them out and I will do my best. And the third and fourth pages, when you were digging into some of that, we do have some questions that I had that it's like custodial supplies, youth programming, laboratory expenses. These are holdovers from back in the day when the city was using an entirely different budget system. It's not clear to me, nor to Diane, nor I'm not sure to anyone in the city where those are, but they're not ours. And so they just get trued out every now and then.
The part of why they show up on our budget at this point, and we could remove them so you don't see them, but they're really there, is coming over to the new system. They reassigned some of the numbers that had been assigned to us that we hadn't used. One of them we had used, so that had to be changed. But that's why they show up there, and that was as they migrated the one system to the other. There was an overlay where some of the line items. So we should not see laboratory expenses. We should not have that custodial. And hopefully that will be, in the next year, that will be something that will be trued up, and we'll see how that goes.
All right. All right, thank you for that. All right, let's move on to item 7, administrative reports, and we'll start with item 7A, the access services report.
This is Diane Baker for the record. I'll just highlight a couple of things because our access services manager, Ermel, is having a couple of deserved days off. Virtual reality continues. You see our one very enthusiastic staff member there, Jana, supporting the regular VR Fridays, and there are a number of other related events that are going on with VR, but the Oculus Quest is the newest item that we received from XR Libraries, and it was a donation, and so this is a fabulous addition to what we are able to offer and take on a regular Friday and take to other events. The other, and I have just a word on it myself, but really the children's shelving, this is, you're seeing the loading and, the loading up into our fabulous quick space container that we have there. And hopefully this is going to be one of the shortest times because Ermel has, as you see here, the installation has begun, it's underway. And the plan and setup that he has worked out has gone through very well, where we're able to do a number of hours before we open, have a few extra overtime hours there, but so we are not disrupting regular hours and not having to have any additional closures. And the downside of that, and it kind of, like I said, dovetails into what I had, is the shelving came perfect, no problem. On the same truck were our end panels, the wood end panels, laminate mainly. They, however, did not survive the shipping very well, and we did have to refuse the shipping on that. So it's still in a claim stage. We will ultimately get them, but it won't be quite as nicely as we had hoped to have it all unveiled at once.
That's unfortunate. All right, let's move on to item 7B, the grants administration report.
So Diane Baker again, most everything here we've actually touched on in our previous items as far as where we're at the budget season. I can let you know also later in the month is when the interim finance committee is, and when they will be reviewing the requests for salary, adding positions. And just a reminder on the children's shelving, you see the most current donation, it was really a total of $13,000 that we got from the Nauman Foundation, which is really what made this happen. And just have some of those pictures of what was, and now you can come see what is and what and how nice. I mean, the shelving is just having it all match. That's going to be amazing. And to just give you a little point of information, this the shelving, of course, has been city property, and getting the city tags on it. And a number of the tags that I've sent in, it's like they're so old they're not even on the list anymore. Which I know that means it's probably from the 80s. However, we have this fabulous Harvest Gold shelving that is the last that's coming down, and none of it has tags on it. So that's telling me that came from the original, likely with the original building in the early 70s. That, yes, fabulous Harvest Gold from the 70s. And I think the only other thing is to let you know with the grants update, we are at the point where we will be submitting a grant application. We're allowed to submit one grant application, which will be it's due March 11th, same day as the budget. And that will be going forward with the bionics in the library.
Thank you, Diane. All right, let's move on to item 7C, presentation and discussion of the creative learning report.
Maria Clusta for the record. So I have a few things to talk with you guys about tonight. First thing is the library's lead with digital skills. So we were awarded the Spotlight Award of $3,000 to expand our workforce program. So last year, we had partnered with Join, and we also had Vanna Bells, our creative learning librarian, provide 2 sets of workshops that helped build skills for those seeking jobs. So they got resume assistance, they learned how to better search for positions, and they also received some interview tips. So what we'll be doing with the 3,000 is expanding those services. One thing we've been talking about is potentially opening it up to young adults as well. A lot of the people who attended our first string of workshops were probably older adults. So we're thinking there's a need potentially for young adults as well, especially when it comes to soft skills. But we are still waiting to receive more information from Google on any specific criteria they want us to follow. But we are starting the planning stages for this project. And then some other things I wanted to tell you about are some of the outreach events that we had this month. So we had a ton of outreach. As you can see, February 21st, we attended the job fair at the Carson City Community Center here. And we ended up speaking with 42 people during that time, which is a lower number, but we did actually have really meaningful conversations with these people. So I think overall it went really well. We talked about the Nevada Career Explorer database. We promoted our computer classes. And we also talked about our maker space as well, and people were very interested in all of those things. And we also let them know about our volunteer opportunities. Several people were interested in that. One thing I didn't have listed on here was February 24th, we went to Fremont Elementary for their reading week. I ended up reading to 5 classes of second graders, like 93 students. Super exciting. The kids loved the books that were read. But that's always an exciting event that they have people in the community read to the students. On February 26th, we had, which was yesterday, we had our library tour for the Carson City School District preschoolers. We had 35 attend, and that went really well. We split them in 2 groups. They got a behind-the-scenes tour of the sorter, saw how that worked. I also took them into the maker space, and we had 3 people working in there. So it was really nice for them to see, something on the 3D printer, and someone was actually making a project, like a Baby Yoda type project. So the kids were like, "What? That looks so cool!" So it was really great overall for them to see, and the parents were like, "What? I can access this? Like, this is something I can, use." So it was great for the parents and the children. And then today we went to Carson Middle School for the College and Career Expo, talked to well over 300 students. It was really intense, but it was really fantastic. So they had 8th graders there, and we spoke to them about, we have a new JV library club that we're going to be starting next month, which is pretty much a tab group. So Teen Advisory Board is what that kind of focuses on. So we were talking about how they could gain their leadership skills, potentially volunteer depending on their age, if they're at least 14, and also have them have a voice with the library if they want to become more involved. We'd love to have their ideas when it comes to planning programs. So we're hoping a lot of them will show up for that. We also talked about the STEAM Arcade program that we offer once a month, which is through the NASA at My Library grant project. And we also promoted the Nevada Career Explorer as well. And I would say overall they learned about some of the things that they didn't realize that we offered. So both of these things that I went over with, I know in my strategic goals on what I had submitted were the older ones, but what they pertain to would be the strategic goal of the Carson City Library will continue to develop and improve the services, programs, and resources that we provide to patrons and visitors, especially when it comes to developing relationships with the school district, enhancing our workplace literacy, and economic development, and then also promoting literacy. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment. My 2 8th graders went today to the
Awesome.
career, I don't know what they call it, expo. They came in with like all of they had like a Frisbee full of stuff.
Yes, there were a lot of tables, so kids were getting something from at least one, like everyone. So I'm sure they grabbed something.
Yeah, I haven't been able to talk to them about it yet. I just know like that's what they did, but we didn't get to really talk in depth. I think my daughter came back and said, "Mom, did you know that I can volunteer at Renown when I'm 14?"
Awesome.
I'm all right.
You just have to get there.
Right. Thank you, Maria. All right, we'll move on to item 7D, the collection development report.
Amy Lauder, Collection Development Manager for the record. You already heard about juvenile shelving twice, but this is a group project. We're all working on it. So yeah, there was some heavy lifting of moving of shelves into the storage container the other week. So we're all very, very experienced in moving shelves now, so we're experts in that. So that was fun. But yeah, yet another picture of the, I don't know if you got the full color, I have black and white, but yes, the beautiful harvest gold. So now, once that last, there's three pieces left they're gonna do this coming week. And then the oldest shelves in the library will be adult nonfiction, which are also pretty old, but not as old. So as part of that, I said, well, you don't want to move more books than you have to. Books are heavy, and it has been several years since we did a full read of the juvenile nonfiction, and it does get a lot of love and use, but weeding just like a garden, you pull out the kind of worn out stuff and the things that aren't working anymore, and the things that are left do a lot better. So it looks a lot nicer already. It did some, taking out the things that just aren't being used anymore or outdated or just worn out beyond usability, patching up some things that are still well loved and can still be saved. So everything just looks a lot nicer already. So that's going really, I have just a little bit, I have to do the Spanish picture books, which I know you didn't realize were in juvenile nonfiction, but they are on the other side of those shelves. So that's the last section that is left to do. So that'll all work out. We just got on the collection development grant, I just took a picture of some of the things that are waiting to be displayed next month. But also this week we got, I think it was 10 boxes of books shipped at once. It was a fort back there. So I said, I bet some of my grant books are in there, and so they are. There's a lot of cool stuff. Everybody's really excited. So look for displays in the library next month. I think we're going to kind of do by region. So I do expect some really nice, some of this stuff and some of the really cool books we have to be on display then. So that's exciting. Any questions about any of those things? Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right. Item number 8, board member announcements and requests for information. I have a couple items here. First, do we have an update on the final strategic plan? And can we get a copy to all the board members? Because I know some of them weren't really involved in that.
Diane Baker for the record. Yes, I should have, I have electronic copies of a brochure style, and then we will have the full style. So we will get those out to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I did want to bring up, I just wanted to, so I'm looking for input on an appetite to maybe hold a special meeting to go over some support letters for the is it LSAT? LSTA, the LSTA funding. Just so we can send a couple letters to our representatives, just asking them to support. So I wanted to maybe set a special meeting for that to like read through the letters and approve them and talk about it amongst the board. So I just wanted to see what everybody's input on that was, if anybody had any opinions.
Yeah. How soon do you need to have them done?
What is the deadline? Yeah, I mean, it's soon, we won't
I
be
think
able to do
mid-March
it.
is when we want them to sign them dear appropriated letters, so sooner than.
Yeah, so sooner than the next board meeting.
Soon.
So if you guys want to give some dates, I think we can pull some dates together.
Todd Goldgrove, I was just double checking with Diane, and we both agree. It's within the next couple of weeks that those letters go to the congressmen and the senators.
So maybe next week. Does everybody have anything particular next week that that will work or won't work? Tuesday's not good for me.
We do need enough time for
Okay.
3
posting.
business days to
Yeah.
to notice the agenda. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yes, yes.
we're looking March 5th.
So Thursday. Or we could do, not
Friday.
do the 5th, the 6th, or the 10th work for me.
Could we meet in the Digi, Maria? Do you know, could the Digi be available?
It
On the
depends,
5th, 6th, or the 10th?
Usually in the mornings,
but,
Okay.
we have more availability, but in the afternoons,
and yeah.
Like after 5?
really need to look at the calendar.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm pulling something up here.
Diane's double checking that real quickly.
Yeah.
Okay,
but-
so 5:15, is this time okay? Okay, so can we check calendar for 5th, 6th, and the 9th? And we have some draft letters we can submit for the agenda? Oh, not the 9th, I'm sorry, the 10th.
Okay.
5th, 6th, or 9th? 10th. God,
Okay.
Okay,
5th, 6th, or the 10th?
Yes.
And would that be in the morning, afternoon, evening?
I think evening at 5:15 would be good.
Yeah,
After
and it should
5:15.
be a relatively short meeting.
Yeah,
the 5th is tricky. Just, we would have to have that posted by tomorrow or, well, 9 AM on Monday, before 9 AM, but it kind of means tomorrow for us, so that could be a little tight. The 6th is our staff development day, so it could be after. I mean, we wrap at 5:30, so it would have to be after that if we did it on the 6th. And then the 10th, 10th is a possibility. I mean, there's always things going on. But, and the timing, are you looking for early evening, kind of mirror?
I think 5:15 is a good time for everyone.
Is the 10th a Tuesday? Yes.
Yeah,
We always have programs in the evening in the Digitorium.
Right, so the Digi wouldn't be available, but
They
we could,
use the executive conference
Executive
room.
or,
conference room?
yeah, and that's a
it's just this
makerspace day
group,
too,
it
so we
should be
couldn't use the
fine.
makerspace.
So we could always meet in the executive conference room at 2. It would be open.
second floor. Okay. That's for the 10th?
So the 10th looks like the best date.
I think
At
10th,
5:15.
yeah, okay, 10th, 5:15. Gives us a little breathing room on posting and then making sure that we have the items.
Yeah, I'll send them to you. I've got
Do you
them.
mind agendizing that? Or
We can
just
do that.
putting it in the next
We
day
can,
or
yeah,
so?
we can make sure and get
Good,
it
then we
set
can
up
get
in
it.
Granicus.
Oh, Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. And then the last one is just requesting to add an item on the March agenda at the end of the agenda for training on open meeting law, ethics, and public records. Yeah, the end of the meeting and then March meeting,
The March 26th.
March 26th.
Jason Woodbury, DA, for the record, and we'll make that happen if that you want it on the March meeting. I'm likely going to miss the March meeting.
Well, then let's
Myself.
do it on the April
I
meeting.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So I'm just gonna send these to them. All right, let's move on to item 9. Where's my sheet? There it is. 9, public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 10, adjournment. Do we need to have a motion for that? We're adjourned.